Hello, everyone. I welcome you to another learning workshop. This one is where we learn how to deal with difficult people. I'm sure we all have had our share of demanding bosses, difficult clients, unrealistic, and sometimes even difficult colleagues. And when we find ourselves in such situations, most of us struggle as to how really find a way out of situations which get on our nerves, can land us in deep trouble, but we really do not know the impact it would create and the consequences that may turn out to if we don't really know the right way of dealing with it. So, in this workshop, by the end of this workshop, you will learn a very simple yet a very effective way to deal with those difficult people. Let's get started. We all have, at some point in our time, difficult colleagues that might take the credit of all the hard work that we have put in, or a demanding boss, which is not just demanding, but also a bit unrealistic, nosy, and sometimes someone who really get on our nerves. So, how do we really deal with them? And since we don't really oftentimes find a way out, what really ends up is that we get ourselves into a stress mode. And beyond that, certain situations and circumstances, specifically at workspace, can have a lasting effect on our self-esteem and also on our confidence. So in this workshop, what I have also done is I bring to you a small story. The story is something quite common in corporate scenario, and through the story, I would like to walk you through that simple steps that I have put them into three steps. And another way of looking at it is through a set of two questions. So let's look at the whole thing via a story. And this one I have practiced it with one of my clients. And with all due permissions, I'm reproducing it here so that we learn together how we deal with difficult people. So here are the three steps. I was working on communication part, and these two questions are part of this whole effective approach. However, if you prefer to go more in depth, you could use these three steps. These three steps, where how we do so, we will look at it through the story of Anil. So Anil story goes like this. Anil is here. He's all uh, deep into a stress mode. And this is his colleague Vaibhav, and this is his supervisor Joseph, who also happens to be the supervisor boss of Vaibhav. So let's see the story in detail. This is a story, it's a slice from Anil's work life, which had a deep impact on Anil's self-esteem and confidence. So what really happened? While I shared this method with Anil, but before this method was shared and we together worked on it, when Anil came to me for a coaching assignment, he was a person who had a very low self-esteem, with questioning himself all the time, blaming himself, filled with regret, guilt, and also kind of very annoyed with the way his work life was. He felt it was in a complete mess. And this is when I had given him some tools along with this one, where he shared with me what really actually happened. So let's see this in detail. Anil is here, and once in a project in which Anil was working along very closely with his boss, Joseph and Vaibhav, they had missed a deadline. Plus, there was some very serious escalations by the client. to a very senior leader on account of they not delivering, and there was a huge uproar on account of this because this account was a very key account, and the whole thing, the it was not just confined to failure of deliverables or missed deadlines, which are quite common sometimes where, in a given part of project, things don't really work out. But it was an interplay and overlap of several things going on simultaneously, including a conflict going on between Joseph and Vaibhav, which Anil was not privy to. And then in this whole mess, Anil found himself that he was not given credit for the work he did. And there was a constant, continuous conflict, heated arguments that went on between Anil, Vaibhav, and Joseph. There was a bit of politics, power dynamics that Joseph was playing both with Anil and Vaibhav. While Vaibhav had his own approach to the whole thing, Anil was a bit someone not very much into conflicts, but somebody very high on harmony. So he would oftentimes take things to himself, where he would feel guilty, low on confidence, low self esteem, thinking maybe I did this wrong, maybe I missed that deadline, or I couldn't do it properly. So this conflict was actually, I mean, it went for a very long period of time. And also it escalated to various other levels, and there was a huge chaos. However, what I'm trying to share with you here is just one slice of it, in which I gave Anil for this particular failure of deliverables and missed deadlines this technique. This technique, and I said, when he reached out to me, as I mentioned to you earlier, he was a person with very low self confidence, despite the fact that he was somebody very good as a human being, as somebody quite skilled, knowledgeable, and a person very pleasant personality. But right now he was suffering from very low self-esteem, blaming himself for everything that had went wrong, and was lacking any confidence, thinking that as if he was in a deep mess. So on account of that, when I gave him this particular method, I asked him first to write the whole situation right from the beginning in detail. So I said, take a pen and a paper. There is science to writing. So don't underestimate that. Even if you have not written before, and if it has been ages since you picked up a pen, do it. Get a notepad, a book, and a pen, and write it in detail. Everything in detail. Then I asked him to calm down, and for this I gave him the breath work. Because oftentimes when we are in a deep stress mode, we may not really have a grip on what really the issue is. Our mind is quite good in taking us to every place possible in the world and making us feel the most miserable, the most guilty of anything, as if all the crimes in the world are being committed by us. And that's exactly how Anil felt. So I asked him, first, you need to get out of that mode, shift your inner state. And the best way to do so is through breath work. So I asked him to practice some deep breathing. And after he wrote, practice some deep breathing, even just for 2 to 3 minutes. The automatic parasympathetic nervous system made him and got him a bit into a relaxed mode. I'm saying a bit here because you need to practice this a lot to really be in control of your thoughts. However, in this case, a 3 minute deep breath was good enough for him to move him out of the stress mode to a calmer inner state. And then I asked him, draw 2 columns. All the story that you've written, extract the facts from it, and then in the next column, write the assumptions you're making of it. And put this before you and evaluate as to how much of your low confidence, low self esteem, I'm not worthy, I did this, I'm to be blamed, I am guilty, I regret this, all of this, where does it match? So either you could also do the same the way Anil did, the 3 steps, or Just ask yourself two simple questions. These two questions, I have adapted them from Tony Schwartz. He's an entrepreneur, and in one of his book, he teaches this in difficult conversations, where these two simple questions are: what are the facts in this situation? So it's very simple of either writing it in a column or just answering this. And I asked Anil to do the same. And the second question is, what's the story I'm telling myself about these or those facts? Now, friends, sometimes we are so caught up in our inner chatter that we fail to really understand the reality from our own web of assumptions and thoughts, which may not be really true. This was exactly what was happening in Anil's case. So, if you happen to be finding yourself into something very similar as how Anil was going through, I would ask you to do the same. Either follow the 3 steps, the situation in detail, write it down, do some breath work, calm yourself, shift your inner state, and then extract the facts from the total issue and then your own assumptions from the total issue. Or simply answer these 2 questions. When you look at your own answers the way Anil did, you will find that your responses, your answers in itself will have enough clarity for you to understand of all the blame you're putting on yourself, the self-pity, the low confidence, to what extent it is correct and what you really need to do in that given situation. I would like to close this with a concept called realistic optimism. It was a term coined by a psychologist, Sandra. What she really meant here, she was the one who gave this. Realistic optimism is where we tell ourselves the most hopeful and empowering story about a given circumstance without subverting the facts, which means we don't really jump to conclusions and start blaming ourselves and kill our self esteem. Instead, we look at the things from a different angle where we search for facts, we understand that what are the assumptions we're really having in here, but at the same time, we are hopeful that given circumstances, we are not fooling ourselves by being in a denial mode, but at the same time, we are hopeful, and with the reality in front of us, we then take from that space, we operate and take a decision of what really we need to do next. This is exactly what Anil did. And I hope if you find yourself in some similar situations, you would do the same. This is one of the finest way to deal with difficult people and situations. Try it and let me know. Thank you.